guys, welcome to the Accidental Fatherhood Podcast with James and Ash. We started this podcast because there isn't a lot of support out there for us guys. We're going through a pretty tough time right now.
Yeah, accidents, not mistakes.
Unplanned pregnancies and new relationships and what is going on with our lives. So we're trying to bring a little bit of support through some awesome special guests, and
It's a place to commiserate together.
and we are rolling, everyone. Welcome to the Accidental Fatherhood Podcast with James and Ash. And we're here today with a wonderful person I met last week called Shari, and she's a hypnobirth practitioner.
Yes, yeah. Hypnobirthing Australia Practitioner.
Yeah. Would you like to give us a bit of a, because we talk about hypnobirthing all the time. And
I love that.
Yeah, and I experienced it firsthand last week, just got the first half last week, second half this week.
Yep.
But for those who don't know what you do, would you like to give us a bit of an introduction to what it is?
Yeah, sure. Well, hypnobirthing, it's kind of like a fancy word for just a positive birth. I think a lot of people have this belief that the hypnosis is really all that it's about and that someone's in there potentially hypnotising you during birth. But honestly, it's just a evidence-based antenatal educational program for parents to come and really learn about the physiology of birth, about about the body and how we're designed for birth, and then giving you a heap of amazing tools and techniques to just help both, well, you as dads as well as especially the mum to be able to go through labour and understand what's happening and navigate that roller coaster of emotions and sensations and potential detours and things like that. So it's not just one way of birthing. It is really about helping you prepare for whatever turn your birthing may take and understanding the maternity system and understanding policies and things that have kind of come into birth. But ultimately, how I like to teach is I want you both as parents to feel like you're the driver of this experience, not a passenger. So, yeah, I love it. I'm super passionate about it. And, my journey started 12 years ago, kind of both where, like, especially James, where you're sitting, and I shared that in my class last week. And I'm actually an accidental parent as well. It was, it definitely was not planned on our part either. So it was a massive shock, and I was so fearful of birth, and maybe we can talk to that there's just so much fear around birth, and especially for us as women, not having an understanding of our body and what we're about to go through. And I was terrified, and I looked to my husband and I said, how the hell am I going to do this? Like, I feel like when I kick my toe, I'm going to pass out. How the hell am I going to push something the size of a watermelon out the size of a lemon? Like,
yeah.
And that's where your head goes, because we don't really hear anything positive about birth. So, yeah.
And the way it's portrayed in movies, TV and all that, it all looks like it's
horrific.
Yeah. And I know when I look at, when I go to these classes and stuff, in the back of my mind is like, geez, I'm glad I don't have to do this.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I'm just like, thank God I don't have to do this. And Alex is really, really daunted by this whole experience. And I think as men, we leave it up to them to do the research and figure out what they got to do and what they want to do. So being a part of this class was actually great for me, because I get to go, oh, okay, I can learn about what's actually going on through this process, and possibly have a more supportive role in what happens throughout that process, and actually be a part of it rather than just sitting in the corner watching.
Looking like a pot plant.
Like a pot plant. You used that the other day. I like that analogy.
Well, that's, I mean, gosh. Well, even when we look back at the history, like, you as men weren't even allowed in the birth space. So it's still very much ingrained in our social conditioning that, you don't have a place in this experience. And that's what I actually love about teaching, is not so much it is also seeing, like, the women really kind of come into their awareness of, like, I'm not flawed, like, I can do this. But to see you guys as dads be able to go, I actually have a role in this. Oh, this actually all makes sense. And it's not some hippie woo-woo way of birthing that maybe when you first heard the term hypnobirthing that you thought you were coming to a class with someone chanting
and they're not going to
guilty.
They're not going to. Your partners aren't going to hypnotise you. Come into the room and you get help with the birth. It's like no. It's and I am honestly a little bit daunted by it as well. And I've had conversation with Alex I'm like, I don't know what, because ours is probably 4 to 5 weeks away now. And part of me is like, do I just stand up behind the curtains or do I want to be in the trenches? And
There are no curtains, James. It's a freaking lie.
so, but I think when you're in the moment, I imagine it's just all very real, and you just, it doesn't, I don't know what it's going to be like.
A lot of hand holding for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
And I think that like you can never plan your birth, but you can prepare for it. And I think for you guys, when you actually have an understanding of the female anatomy, being able to understand the hormones that need to come into play, and that to be able to labour and birth the way that we're designed to, we need to create an environment where we feel safe and private and unobserved and feel loved and supported. That's really your role as birth partner, to be that person for her, to help her feel safe so she can just surrender. Because if she's too much in that thinking part of the brain, that neocortex, then that's when labour slows down. I think that's really, what I taught you last Sunday, wasn't it? That, we are mammals. This is mammalian birth, but we as humans have this prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of the brain. And we also instinctually as mammals have a defense mechanism too. And we are so conditioned in our Western culture to fear birth, that we see it's painful, that women birthing on their back, things are just going to be done to you, that, the guys are just off to the side, either being screamed at or, they don't really have a role when we see a lot of representation of birth, especially in movies. So when we're now finding ourselves in this experience, it's a moment of understanding, like, we as humans are creatures of certainty. We like to be certain of outcomes. And when we're not certain of an outcome, what do we tend to prepare ourselves for? Like the worst. And so when that's the focus, that what if this happens? What if that happens? And we don't understand the whole process of it, then we are actually instinctively going into fight or flight, which is actually taking away from the instinctual mammalian part of us that is designed for birth.
Yeah, and I was speaking to Alex, and I went to counselling yesterday, and it was very, very good for us.
Wow.
We thought we'd get on the boat early rather than leave it until where there's all these problems in the relationship. We thought, let's iron out a few kinks now before the birth and just see if we can kind of learn how to communicate better. But she actually said something about their amygdala. Amygdala?
Yeah.
That's the one. It actually grows bigger. So
During pregnancy. Yeah, the brain the brain changes.
right. So
That explains a lot.
which makes them act more insecure, more worried, more uncertainty. And for us, Alex is really finding it hard to feel safe because we're in this new relationship.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, and she made it very clear yesterday, it doesn't matter what you do, James. She's going to feel unsafe right up until that birth. It doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter what you do. She's in this scared fight or flight moment pretty much the whole pregnancy. And that's why she doesn't trust you. That's why and it's not because of
anything you've done.
Anything I've done. It's more about her body's changing, and she's kind of just working through those hormones. And so that was nice to hear, because there's been a big kind of, started off small and became a bigger problem for us around I feel like I'm doing everything to make her feel safe, and it's not being it's not being acknowledged, or and it's like I don't know what more I can do. I'm doing all the things, and it's not good enough. And for me, who I definitely want to make this a good birth for her and be a good partner and be supportive. And it really hurts when you're doing all the things and everything, and it's not good enough.
Right.
And I think from that perspective, it was really enlightening to understand that it's her body going through these things. And it was good for her to understand that as well, because the reason she doesn't feel safe is because of these hormones and these things going on. So
also, you're a perfectionist, so that would be driving you nuts to be trying to do everything and it's not working.
Yep. It's like banging my head against the wall. So it was really good. I would really encourage anyone in a new relationship to, counselling is not for just when there's problems.
No.
I feel like it's great to understand each other better and communicate better for the long run, and to, to just better prepare for how you're going to cope living with each other, having a kid with each other. So it was only a 2-hour session, but it really helped. So, yeah.
Do you do stuff in your class to help bring partners together?
Oh, absolutely. We're going to experience that on Sunday. We're doing a full bonding exercise. So,
great.
Yeah.
Because when I was in the class on Sunday, I was looking around and, I felt like the oldest guy in the room, but two, there was a lot of love in that room. And Alex and I, there was not.
Right.
So I felt a little bit sad that there's all of these couples that are really there, really supportive, really close, really affectionate with each other, and I've got none of that. And I felt really sad about that.
It is sad.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can help you on the weekend.
That was the same for me, like Tish and I,
Yeah.
when we went through our classes. Well, we went through a little bit earlier than you guys, but not too much. We're still the most advanced. And like all these couples that have been there for knowing each other for years, and they're like, oh, and I'm like, fucking, I do not know this girl really that well. Like, I'm like, do I have to get all wooey? Like we're like going through the workbook and we're writing things down about each other, and I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like, I don't know these questions. I don't know these answers. But it definitely, like, we gave ourselves to that process that we were working through. And I mean, obviously we were speaking briefly before, and I went through a different practitioner, but similar, but different, right? Anyway.
Different programs, but very similar philosophy and outcomes, of course.
And when we went through that and we gave ourselves to it, like, it definitely helped with our birth, and I think that brought us really close together doing that program. So and doing all the things.
All the things.
It also really helped that Tish didn't want to. She, like, I don't know. It was just perfect scenario. Do you do the belly bands and all the like the massage and the touching and stuff? Well, I was lucky. Tish didn't want to touch, and I didn't want to touch. Really, like, I was like, I don't really want to do that. Like, I don't, feel comfortable. And it was just a perfect storm. So it was like, oh, cool. We don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what your love language is, right? And I actually do explain this in class as well. We have these love languages, and how she wants to receive love and then how you want to receive love could be very different. And that's something that, gosh, my husband and I have been together for 17 years, and we're still trying to figure each other out, because I'm not his love language is definitely physical touch. So he was very much like loved all the touch stuff, whereas I'm not. That my physical touch is down the bottom for me. I'm like acts of service, and it's funny to kind of see that, and it really comes out in play in the birth space as well. And when you can understand that as well, you'll be able to see kind of what she needs, and when to kind of come in, and then when to step back as well. And, I hope in my classes being able to understand just that physiology and the hormones. And sometimes we don't want to be touched. And sometimes, like, 5 minutes later, we'll be like, get me something, like, please just be like close to me. And so for my second birth, I had to actually condition myself to the touch, because I wanted him to feel, because I felt like our first birth, it was all, I did all the hypnobirthing, I did all the breath work, and he was there, and he was very present and supportive, and he was absolutely my rock when I needed him to be. But there was no, like, we didn't practice any of the hypnobirthing stuff together. And I then realised after the birth that I felt like maybe I had kind of not let him in. And so for my second pregnancy, like, I had to go, right, let's practice this. Like, let's do this light touch together. And it was amazing, because then through the birth, he did the light touch all through the birth, and I know it was helping me to release those hormones. And so look, I feel sad for you feel like that, James, but it's like, this is a massive journey that you're both on, and it was not something that you obviously prepared for, but we didn't prepare for that, but for ours either. But it is absolutely a rite of passage that you're about to move through, and there is a lot of surrender that needs to come in from both of you. And you may hear that she's not trusting you right now, but in that moment, in that space, when you're the only person who she does know, she will have to surrender to that. And that's when I know you'll really step up and be that person for her, and that will change your whole relationship, bringing this baby into the world that you've made together. And I hope I can help you make it more of a positive one.
Yeah, I feel like it will be a big bonding experience.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so when we went through ours, I think because you guys are going to probably do a birth plan, I'm assuming this week or next week.
Yeah, well, I kind of use the concept of birth mapping.
Yep.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of, and for me as a hypnobirthing practitioner, I don't want my parents walking out feeling like you have to just breathe your baby out, and that you to have a successful hypnobirth, it's a drug-free water birth. It's not about that. It's about kind of not putting just one expectation on one experience and having this plan, because when it doesn't go to plan, or if it doesn't go to plan, that's when we can be so hard on ourselves and feel like we failed or feel like we could have done better. Or so the way I kind of like to put it is well, let's understand all the journeys and let's map it out. And so, this week we're going to delve deep in, last week we covered all natural, physiological, understanding that and all the techniques. But this week we're really going to I want to help you understand that journey of going, well, what if intervention is suggested? Let's understand the questions you can ask and understand the techniques you can use if you do need to choose induction or even cesarean birth, and let's understand the journeys. But ultimately that destination is to emerge from that birth feeling that, regardless of how your baby comes into the world, you guys know in your heart that you've given your baby the best possible birth with whatever circumstances you were given. And sometimes it's not the journey you had originally hoped to travel on, but it doesn't mean that you failed. It just means that was the journey you were meant to take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, on that.
Sorry, I can't.
It's okay. Where I was going with that. But thanks for explaining that, because it was a question that I did want to cover. Mm-hmm. But with the map that you call it, it's you and Alex will sit down and you will create your map. You guys are going to go on this trip. But here's the thing, Alex is going to be a passenger to her emotions sort of thing. And
on the day, yeah.
You're the navigator and the driver, but you're the one that has to steer the ship for where Alex wants to go. So,
yep.
And I feel that's what brought Talisha and I really close together during the birth experience was, I knew exactly what she wanted and when she wanted, and I was able to speak up for her and be that voice, because she was just focusing on...
She had to trust you in that moment.
Chilling out. And it was really... That was really, beneficial for us as a couple.
Yeah.
So I think that's the best thing about the hypnobirthing experience that I found. And it also gives you something to do, gives us some sort of act in the birth or role to play.
Yes. So, and it probably gave you more confidence in being able to help at the time as well. Right?
Well, yeah, definitely. Obviously there's a lot of just sitting around and doing stuff. And then to your point before about not wanting with the touches and stuff, during Talisha's birth, it was 1 minute she's wants touch, next minute I was showering her and she's get the water off me, get the water back on me, and it's oh my fucking god, yeah.
You got to be prepared.
You got no idea, you're just getting
orders?
Yeah. Did I say barking? Did I say that? Shit. Did I?
No, I said
oh good.
Barking orders at you. It's just a phrase.
It's yeah, no, and then you're anyway, getting yelled at. But yeah, Talisha, at the end of our birth, Talisha's 100%, you're the reason why I had the birth that I wanted to have. Because you knew exactly what to say, and then you knew exactly when to push me a little bit harder when I was, when she was thinking about getting intervention. And I knew that she didn't want an intervention at that stage, and she also didn't really require it. She wasn't at that point where she needed it.
She was just having that crisis of confidence.
Yeah, and I was what would you do if we're at home? And that was enough. That was it. That's all I said.
Yeah.
Simple little, what would you do if we were at home? And she just flicked a switch, and, an hour later, Billy was born.
Yeah, and you're going to experience that.
So,
and I try and explain that to the women as well, going, you're going to have these moments of doubt and of can I swear?
Yeah.
the fuck it moments, I can't do this moments. She's going to have them. And it's, that's where you as birth partner and dad need to be the one to believe in her when she doesn't believe in herself. And that my husband did the same thing for me. Yeah, I definitely had that moment, and I was literally an hour away from meeting the baby as well. So it's a very common thing that we go through, and you got to be prepared for it. And if you're not prepared, that's when the dads will go, just get her whatever she wants and needs. But then when you don't understand what that intervention could lead into as well, and when you're in that moment of like, fuck it, can you really be rational in the way of like having a medical professional explain it to you and what the risks are or benefits or alternatives? Well, no. And that's where if you don't have this kind of information and you take this intervention, or it's understanding then what detour that could take you onto.
Yeah, because it's like a chain of events, isn't it? Once you do one,
it can definitely
lead to other interventions until all the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not to say that every intervention leads to another one, but when you look and read other birth stories, and epidurals have a higher rate of ending up in a cesarean than if you didn't have it. So it's just understanding that, and that's why I'm so passionate about this education, is just going, look, if you need to take that detour, then to still come out of that experience feeling empowered and positive, do it. But it's just going, right, if we decide to make this detour and have that epidural or birth our baby, bring the labour on through induction or medical intervention, we need to understand what that journey looks like and what it could end up in. And it's really kind of giving you that responsibility of the decisions you make.
Yeah. And there's a lot of language that even just you use then, that if you're a guy and you've just got your partner pregnant, you're like, what's an epidural? what are interventions? And there's a lot of technical terminology. There's a lot of things that can happen in birth. Is it like, and I was saying to you earlier, I've done all the things. I've been going to all the classes.
I'm very impressed. I'm so impressed.
To try and educate myself around this process, because it's really, really complicated.
Yeah.
And I think Alex in particular wants more confidence in me to know what to do in those situations as well, which helps her feel safer. So I think that's why I'm doing all the things.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Which is to support her through this.
Yeah.
And as I said, I wouldn't like to be doing it myself. So if there's any way I can help this process, and it's our child at the end of the day, and how can we make this a beautiful experience, or the best that it can be, and not be, and be well educated as to ask the right questions if there's an intervention needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I also want to normalise the fear as well. Fear is not a bad thing, but we have put ourselves in such a bubble in our lives that we're too scared to step out and experience anything great. And so that's where we let fear hold us back. So when it comes to the fear of this experience that you're going to go through, again, I don't expect you to walk out of my class on Sunday with no fears of birth. It's okay to have these, worries or things are going to always kind of come in, but it's whether you allow that to hold you back from having this amazing experience, Ash, which, you've gone through it. Like you can't plan for it. And this is what's really hard for us being human. We want to have that creature of certainty. We want to be certain of an outcome. And this is just one experience in your life that you're not going to be certain of an outcome until it happens. And it's not a bad thing either, but you got to release that control as well.
Well, that's one of our guests was Lissy Abrahams, and she said it's just the illusion of control. Everything in life's an illusion that we have control over anything. So this is like being on a plane, you have no control, but we talked about. But yeah, having birth, this is a perfect illustration of, we want a certain thing, but we don't have control over it.
No.
All we can do is have these plans and
you guys need
preferences.
Yeah, it's like, and it's so amazing to hear you're doing all of the things, but even doing all of the things will never guarantee you this potential experience that you desire and want. And you also need to be willing to surrender to that and understand that, so that if it doesn't potentially go the way that you're hoping, that you can both actually do a debrief and reflection and go, you know what, James, I don't think I know like a dad that has done multiple birth class, like you've done Lamar's, you've done like,
the master class.
I think it's hard enough to get them to come to like 2 days of hypnobirthing classes. So like, be super proud of yourself that you are doing everything, and to be able to also really come back to that, even after the experience.
Yeah, definitely. And I think removing the expectations of how you want it to be, just those expectations, you can't always meet the expectations that you have. So, just kind of, it's good advice.
Yeah. The thing I like about the hypnobirthing is, and you said it before, is like it really educates you and empowers you to say no to certain things that when you aren't educated, you're like, oh, I'll just go in like the constant monitoring, the belly band. Is it the belly band?
Yeah, the CTG.
So basically, when the girls are pregnant, the standard sort of practice in Western society, or in Australia anyway, is basically when they're when they show up to the hospital, they put a band on because it's easy to listen to the baby's heart rate, right? So hypnobirthing taught us that you can actually go, sorry guys, but no, can we just get the Doppler? Is it the Doppler?
There's other options.
Yeah, and can you just use the Doppler and monitor the bub's heart rate through the Doppler? Now, I knew this in practice going in, but we had no idea why it might be important, other than, you've got these bands on, or the girls have the bands on, they're moving around, there's cords everywhere. So obviously, and then they've come up with like a Bluetooth one that there's no cords on. But we went in because Talisha was in hospital literally that day. They're like, oh, we're just going to put the bands on. Is that okay? And she's like, yeah, it's fine. Put the bands on. I was like, you sure? Like, I'm ready to go to town because I've got
got your gloves on.
I've got the map, right? Like, it's my time to drive the fucking ship. It's been 10 months of Talisha doing whatever, telling me what to do. And now it's my turn to drive. Yeah. So I'm like, you sure? And this was the first time I should have probably stepped up and said, no. But anyway, and they told us the reasons why, and it was just because she had a bit of a Braxton Hicks or something, like a false labor the day before,
Okay.
Bub got quiet. She's like, oh, I haven't felt Bub move.
So reduced movement.
Yeah, just before the birth. So they're like, so anyway, they said, oh, because of that, we'll put the constant monitoring on. Now, what rate does a baby's heart rate beat at before birth? Do you know?
Oh gosh, I'm not medically trained. I'm not exactly, because it can change. Like every baby is different, just like our heart rate can change. But so there is a normal range.
It's not like 70 beats per minute. It's like in the hundreds, right? Like it's quick. So all we heard when we first got into the hospital, the first thing that we got told is, oh, we're in here today, so we're going to get constant thing to make sure Bub's okay. And then they put on the thing, and all we hear is this, like, and all it's doing is ramping up the energy in the room to full fucking panic mode.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. And then Tisha's like getting naked. She's like, I need to give birth now. Like,
yeah.
And I'm like, whoa. Like, we've had this nice, relaxing, calm drive to the hospital. We've played the music. I've been told I'm not allowed to get McDonald's. Like, really calm drive into the hospital. We've parked the car. Tisha's waddled into the delivery room. It was all good. And then they put that fucking monitor on, and then all of a sudden Tisha's like getting ramped up, like, I'm going to give birth now. And it's like, you've got some time to go. Anyway, we ripped it off. As soon as we ripped it off, it was sweet.
Calm again.
Like, well, Tish calmed down, and then 9 hours later. But it's just that, and that's like my biggest takeaway from the hypnobirthing experience is like, it gives you that sort of education of why you can say no, why you would say no, and hey, you don't have to do this. Whereas if we had no idea, or maybe if we had done some of the other classes that James has done, we'd probably be like, oh, we need to do this. This is normal.
Well, I think you naturally listen to the professionals, right? You go, well, I'm in the doctors, they know what they're doing. I'm just going to listen to them. And that's very natural when you go to the doctors or the hospital.
Well, we are conditioned.
You become,
as the doctor says.
Yeah, you become the patient. It's like, I'll do as I'm told.
Yeah.
You don't think to question the doctor on every move that he's making. But as part of the this birth plan, I think it's important to know what questions to ask. And
well, it's knowing that there are options. And I explained this as the analogy in our first class. Like, we are birthing in a system, and a system wants to work effectively. And the way I kind of describe it is, it's like the flags on the beach. You know, we know that it's safe to swim between those flags because there's normally a lifeguard that's trained to spot danger. They have all the equipment to get out to you quickly, but you wouldn't necessarily go and ask that lifeguard to swim with you between the flags. It's like they normally say, I'll stand back, I'll watch and observe, and if you get into trouble, that's when I'll come in and that's when I will help you. But then I kind of talk about understanding and going, well, we need to know where the flags are, because there are some medical caregivers whose flags are like right out, really wide, very supportive of natural birth, physiological, undisturbed birth, won't press on induction, things like that. But when we birth in a hospital, the flags come in because hospitals have policies, and those policies are guidelines that are set on a population basis. They're not on an individual case. And if you don't know where your flags are, and you don't know that there's potentially options outside of the flags, they will only give you information within those flags. And even the language that they use, going, oh, we won't allow you to go over 41 weeks, or yeah, we're just going to pop a monitor on you, without the conversation of going, okay, well, what are the benefits of having the monitor? What are the risks? Because evidence has shown that continual monitoring, if you're having a normal, healthy, uncomplicated pregnancy, continual monitoring can lead to higher intervention rates. But that's never explained to you. It's just a lot of intervention has come into birth that we don't realise is an intervention because it's just become such a normal part of our birth culture within the system. So unless you know that, okay, well, we would like free movement, we don't want to be strapped with wires, and she's had a normal, healthy pregnancy, like, if there's distress with the baby, then yes, we want to keep an eye on that, and that's when those interventions save lives. But you're not ever given that option. It's just, okay, this is what we're doing to you. And when you are in such an intense experience and vulnerable moment, and not that vulnerability should be seen as a sign of weakness, but it is, and we're in their environment, this is their workplace, this is what they do every day, it can be very hard for us to have that confidence to actually speak up and question, because we don't know anything, we don't know the options. So that's really what I love about teaching this, is to go, look, like, yes, there is an absolutely time for medical intervention, but it's understanding through the questions you ask, and the way I put it is the quality of the questions you ask determine the quality of the answers you get.
Yeah.
If you don't ask questions, then things will just be done to you, and then that's when it can take you off onto a different trajectory, or a detour onto a path that you were nowhere near prepared for because you didn't do the work or had that knowledge.
Yeah, and I found that too. Like when I was in, when we were doing the hypno, or when we're doing the birth, as soon as they realised that we had done our hypnobirthing class, and that we knew, and we're like, no, we don't need that. No, we're not going to get that injection, whatever it might be. They're like, oh, okay. Like, they're like, they just took a step back, and then they started like actually asking questions. Yeah. A lot of them, well, do you want to get some intervention, or like, are you guys ready to do some intervention? Did you want to do that? Slowing the birth. This is slowing the birth down, or what? And I was like, no, we're good. We're just chill. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for offering.
Yeah.
But fuck off now. Like, yeah.
But if you didn't have that education, and you were coming from a place of fear, and even the medical language is very fear-based, that we are being projected with fear-based information even, and then that affects our decision-making, then that's when we surrender and hand the keys over to them to become the driver.
Yeah. And I mean, look, I feel for the medical stuff too. Like if there was one birth that went wrong and they lost the baby, if I was in that position, I would absolutely be going, yep, let's do the fecal monitoring right now. Like I would not be like, oh, you guys, let's have a natural birth. Like, let's try for a natural birth.
Yeah.
And then if not, I would be doing everything.
And that's where too, we've got to understand we have fears, but they're also practicing potentially from a place of fear from their own experiences. So,
and they've probably had a lot more experiences than us.
Well, yes, but that's where the communication is important. When they know that you also know and understand and have these techniques, and then that's where they can trust you more to be like, okay, these couple know what they're doing. Whereas compared to maybe parents that didn't know this kind of education was available, and they just rock up on the day, they are literally, as they walk in, handing the keys over. That's a massive responsibility for a medical caregiver to go, well, you just tell us what to do.
Yeah.
So of course they want to control the outcome, and they can control it through intervention, induction, cesarean. They cannot control physiological birth.
Yeah. We had a class of 6, and we were the first cab off the rank, and we had a 9-hour birth, like labour.
That's great for first birth.
Yeah, and the only intervention, if it's even classed as an intervention, is a saline solution into the back to basically sterile. It's I wouldn't recommend it. Like,
it's intense, yeah.
It looks so painful.
It is very intense.
What
There's
is it?
Sterile water injections on the acupressure points that I showed you last week on the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it took Tisha's mind off. Like it slowed the because Talisha was trying to push it when she wasn't fully dilated. So she was trying to deliver without being fully dilated. So they're worrying about a lot of tearing and I don't know what other stuff. So they're like, oh, we can do this. That will slow it down a bit. And I was like, okay, cool. And it's like a little bee sting.
Times 1,000.
It's not a bee sting, is it?
Oh, fuck no. It's like the whole hornet's nest got her at once.
Yeah, they are intense, but some women have, it lasts for about 30 seconds and then it can give massive relief for many women, but for some women it doesn't work. And it's the same, understanding that not all interventions work either. So and that's what we're going to be going through on Sunday is just having you equipped with these questions to be able to go, hang on a minute, you can see that this is, all right, they're making this suggestion here. Let's fully understand it before we make that decision.
Yeah, in hindsight, we probably should have just hopped back in the tub because the tub was just slowing and keeping Tish so calm in hindsight. But anyway.
That's learning, right?
Live and learn, yeah.
But,
you still had a great birth, though, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, we did. And Celicia ended up delivering in the shower. So, yeah, I grew about 8 different hands and was holding torches and phones and bloody, mirrors and friggin' hose and, like, drops in another hand. Like, yeah. Anyway, you'll get that, James. You develop hands. And then don't do anything wrong. But, yeah. Film it! Getting this Instagram, Dad's Instagram. Anyway, but yeah, so we were like the first cabs off the rank. We had this like great birth experience. We're like, oh yeah, and everybody in our class is like, congratulations. I think we're the only one that actually had a really good like birth story out of everybody.
Yeah, wow.
So I mean, the most people had. I think our class was 6 or 7. I think 3 of us had full natural, or maybe 4. But like one was, is it breached when they're upside down?
Yeah.
One was breached and they were at home birth.
Bum first.
Home birth.
Oh my
God. It was like, so
they should have known that though, shouldn't they?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on how many scans that they've agreed to, and it's not always like.
And they can turn around at the last minute, can't they?
Yeah, they can.
Spin
Can
around.
they?
Yeah. They once they're head down, they normally stay head down. But I have had a mum who's at 34 weeks, baby was head down and then flipped breech. But then after some great techniques and releasing, the baby turned back head down. So
Yeah.
My mum gave natural birth. It was a second birth, but I came out head first. My brother was breech, so she had to do 2 births.
Oh, no.
yeah, it's quite common for twins to have one head down, one breech.
Yeah. And she's like, she told me the other day, she goes, after that first one, they go, okay, you got to do it again. She goes, I can't do it again. I just can't. I don't have the energy. There's no way I can do that again. But yeah, it's
full on.
Yeah, it's full on. But she managed 19 minutes later.
Wow.
Is it 2 placentas?
It depends. So you can have 2 placentas, or you can have a baby that shares 1 placenta. That's normally like identical twins will normally have the 1 placenta. But
Explains a lot.
Oh, I wonder.
there's a couple of different. I don't know all of the. There's differences in twin babies. Yeah.
Paternal, semi-identical, and identical. I think are the 3 main ones. But yeah, what I can only speak to what I learnt last week, being my first hypnobirth class. But I loved. You had these props that actually explained how the vagina and the womb work and the pelvis and the pelvic floor.
Yeah.
And that was actually really good to understand how it all works and what the cramps, not what they're actually doing. They're like pushing. They're pushing.
The tightenings, the contractions.
Contractions
are
like helping push the baby down.
Yeah.
And that was really awesome to know. So for me, learning all that about the biology was really cool. I loved that, and I loved that. You know, hypnobirthing, you think it's all woo-woo, but everything that you were saying was like very scientific. Like these hormones get released when you do this, these hormones do this, and all of those things that we were doing, whether it was the light touching or the massage or the pressure points, was all to help release hormones which have an effect on the way the baby's born and help ease all of those things. So it was really cool, like learning all that. And we used Alex had a migraine the other day.
Okay.
We used that one. We used the hand one.
Great.
She goes, can you just pinch there really? I went, yep, no worries. Like, how hard do you want me to go?
Yeah.
So we've used one already.
I'm a very visual teacher. I've got so many props. I've got like my uteruses, I've got pelvis, I've got placentas, I've got, but it helps you to understand. Like, it's not just like, hey, well, the baby just comes down and out the vagina. It's like there's things that need to happen, and the pelvis needs to have mobility and how to make space, and understanding we're not designed to birth on our back. Like, and when you see the pelvis and how the pelvis closes when we're on our back, like, it's just like, but this is all we have seen of birth since we were children, is that women birth on a bed on their back. And it's just, it's such an awakening moment for so many of you, and especially you guys. Like, it's just like, yeah, like, it makes sense. And I find the visual aspect can just really help with that learning and understanding.
Yeah, and even the dilation, that's a term I've heard a lot. Like, I've not been through birth before, but I'm like, she's 4 centimeters dilated. I've heard that a lot, but I had no idea what it meant.
Mean?
What does it mean? What does the dilation mean? I just figured the vagina was opening. Right? This is what I thought.
Sort of is.
Sort of is, but it's but then there's different elements to that as well. It's like the thinning of it as well as the dilation. So there's like different levels to that as well, which I thought was pretty interesting. And
do you say you've got a prop placenta?
Yes.
Is it actual visual? Because that's one thing
you can't eat it, Ash. You can't eat it. It's not. It's
one
not
thing
a real
that I
one.
wasn't prepared for, James, was what that placenta actually looked like.
Oh no, I definitely. Yes, I have. Placenta with membranes, and I put the baby in the membranes, and just understanding that, because again, in the movies, there's no such thing as a placenta.
Yeah, I had no idea. I was like, what? What?
Yeah,
they pass the placenta?
And it's just understanding that after the birth, what's normal and, what can happen. But then there's a lot of intervention around that stage as well. And unless you know that this intervention is going to come in, that you have another choice, it'll just happen to you. And
You're talking about the delayed clamping?
Well, delayed core clamping, but it's called active management of the placenta, where your medical caregiver will give you an injection into the thigh to stimulate uterine contractions. And unless you know, like, that you can wait for the natural hormones to come in, they'll just give you the injection without even asking.
Yeah,
so
apparently they don't even know it's happening. Do they just?
Well, yeah. Look, I mean, it happened to me. I knew I had options, but it happened to me in my birth. I'd had a longer labour, but I did it. I birthed my son. And that moment was just like, oh my God, I did it. And then I said to her after the birth, I want to birth my placenta naturally. And the midwife snapped at me and said, I don't have time to wait for your placenta, and injected the needle of syntocinon into my thigh.
Yeah, right.
And this is, again, understanding we are birthing in a system, and a system wants to get you, like, let's get this done, let's move you on. And so unless you know that, like, and I kind of wish that my husband spoke up, but we weren't really taught about it in our hypnobirthing classes, and that's where I'm really passionate about that. And look, there's, again, absolutely a time for active management, and it saves many lives from postpartum hemorrhage and things like that, but it's not always needed. If you've had a natural, drug-free physiological birth, then there's this rush of hormones after the birth that then also can birth the placenta. But if they see you losing too much blood, then that's when the active management saves lives. So again, anyone listening, this is not medical advice. Please, the reason why I want to share this is to get any new dads or parents thinking about questions, like questioning yourself and going, actually, I know nothing. Like, what don't I know? And let's find out. And that's really what I feel my role is as a Hypnobirthing Australia practitioner, is like, it's not to tell you there's just one way of birth and there's no right or wrong way to hypnobirth. It's just going, look, this is your experience, and for you to feel empowered in birth, you have to empower yourself. And if you're not willing to go out and search for the information and do the work, then like it's going to potentially be a rough ride then. Not always, but it's like, wouldn't you prefer to try and have as much information as possible and then be able to navigate it, and that you're a part of the decision making?
Yeah.
And a part of the birth. Like, I really want to be a part of the birth.
Yeah.
And confident that I can actually help.
Yeah.
Right?
And it is cool, like, knowing that it's like, I feel like I was definitely a part of that birth. Like, yeah. So that was cool. And it is cool.
Do you reckon
like,
it's 50-50?
Probably 60-40 more me, James.
Oh, look, I couldn't have done it without my husband, And honestly, like I know a lot of midwives. I've taught medical professionals. I've taught doctors. Like I've taught a lot of people who are professionals in birth, and they come to learn from me. And a lot of them say like, we love the hypnobirthing couples because the dads actually know what they're doing, and they can then stand back and watch and observe. And so that's what's also amazing
and not panic as well, right? Like when you don't know what's going on, the doctor goes, we need to do this. You're like, well, you could actually start panicking, I imagine.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have panicked. I would have just been like, oh, off you go. Have fun. Have fun, baby. I'll see you soon. See you in about 20 to 30 hours. I'll just be out here sleeping on the couch.
No, you wouldn't do that.
No, that's terrible. That's what I would have imagined if I didn't
do something like
this. If
this.
Talisha didn't go, let's try this hypnobirthing stuff, I would have been, oh, okay. It was a squeeze to even find a class that we could get in at that time as well, because it was still COVID restrictions were still in play. So it was like the first full class back, but even then it was like restricted numbers or something.
And that's a whole nother like set of flags right there that have, I didn't have when I was birthing my son and my baby, 8 and 11 years ago.
Yeah, we didn't even know if I was going to be allowed in.
Yeah.
Like it was one of those sort of, it was all good, but it was like on the edge of.
I had women whose partners, if they weren't jabbed, that weren't allowed in the birth space, and it's just so heart-wrenching to hear that they took that human right away from a woman in that moment. It's oh gosh, it's a whole nother.
Yeah, I would have been like, well, I'm going to be in jail, so I'm going to knock this fucker out.
So there are other things that you've got to also navigate to with that, but it's not so much now. But yeah.
I had a point and I totally forgot about it. Always happens to me.
Well, what do you think was the biggest help for you doing the hypnobirthing course? What do you think was the biggest?
Just knowing the information, learning the information, and also like it was. I thought it was going to be really boring and hippie and wooey and like, yeah. And I think I ended up being like, well, I felt like I was the best student in the class. Like, in all honesty, I was looking forward to it by the end. I was like, fuck yeah, I'm all over this birth shit. I could be a doula. But no one would come to me. That's the problem. Like, what woman would come to me as a doula? But that said, I was like, I could be in this birth space. Like, I was rocking it. Yeah, I had the hypnobirthing shirt on and everything. Like I'm a fucking hypnobirthing dad.
I find that like you guys end up being our biggest advocates, honestly. Yeah. Biggest skeptics to start and then become the biggest advocates.
100%. That's what I was going to say. I was. It's not just dads that can do it, obviously, either. It's mums could be a birthing partner or support person, and that's the thing that.
Yeah, it's not just for couples. I have actually in my class this weekend same-sex couple.
Yeah, we had a same-sex couple.
I have women bring their mums along. I have women who've chose to go on this journey by themselves and have gone through IVF and sourced a donor and stuff. And so it's not just for heterosexual couples. That's for sure. It's anyone really who wants to prepare for their birth.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to say before. But yeah, we got to wrap it up, do we?
Oh, yeah, we can wrap it up.
You're on a time, aren't you?
I'm okay.
Okay. Anyway, so you usually do 2 classes, Saturday.
Yeah, so it's a 12-hour course. I've got a couple of options. So I either have a weekend that's over 2 Saturdays or 2 Sundays, or I do have a midweek evening course that's over 4 weeks, so 4 3-hour sessions. But I also offer online Zoom as well, which is over 4 3-hour sessions too. So yeah, this is.
And are you just teaching this, or are you a doula as well?
No, this is my life's work, and this is all I do. So yeah, I do privates online. I've got clients all over the world. So yeah.
And I was going to comment you, because I've done some public speaking myself, but you presented really, really well. Like the class was constantly engaged. You made eye contact many times with me, and I'm like, oh, she's looking at me again. When people do that, it's a little bit unnerving sometimes. It's like, oh, okay.
She's talking to me right now.
Yeah. It was an awesome day. just for those who don't know, what does the course entail? Like, what can you just quickly go over kind of the curriculum that you actually cover?
Yeah, sure. So there are 4 units that we cover. So Unit 1 is about creating and maintaining a positive mindset. So that's really where I delve into understanding the physiology, mammalian birth, the body. I do all of my, props with the pelvis and how the baby makes its way through the pelvis and things like that. Unit 2 is our toolkit for birth. So this is where you as dads really get hands-on doing massage, acupressure points, anchor touch, light touch, pelvic squeeze, and understanding what you can do to help relieve pain, or if labour slows down, there are certain points you can activate. Breath work, honestly, the breath is really what the women will really zone in on and focus on. So learning that breath. Unit 3, which we'll be covering with you this weekend, is about preparation and choices for you to feel empowered. So that's where we start off the session with a beautiful bonding, talking about bonding with the baby and doing a beautiful connective bonding relaxation kind of meditation for the two of you, and bonding in with your baby together. And then I really help you to explore and understand that journey of induction intervention, because we have one of the highest induction caesarean rates in the world here in Australia. So induction is very high in our public hospitals, private hospitals, and so is caesarean. So it's really understanding, well, is this necessary? Is there a medical reason? What's the reason? And sometimes there are medical reasons, and yes, that's when it's necessary. But then for you to be able to be that advocate and go, well, we understand, and okay, tell us what the risks are. So that's really, and also we go into how you can optimize your baby's position for birth. So again, just understanding what the baby needs to do and how, what she can do through pregnancy to just release and create balance. And then Unit 4, we just bring it all together, really, talk about the birth itself, what to expect, like signs of labour, when to go to the hospital after the birth.
Start the timer.
After the birth. So, birthing that, placenta is absolutely a part of this experience, and understanding your options and rights around that. And then, just kind of considering that postpartum as well, which is the 4th trimester, which I think a lot of parents don't prepare for. They prepare for the birth, but then don't prepare for actually bringing the baby home, and then the changes again that are happening with your partner, and what her brain is changing, and don't disregard the postpartum. That's something that my husband and I did not prepare for whatsoever.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you said about the. I'm just thinking Waterboy now. The umedongwalaga, what is it? The part that gets bigger.
Yeah, the
amygdala.
Amygdala.
Yeah, I remember
that's wrong.
And that's because Waterboy's stuffing my way of saying it as well. Amygdala.
Amygdala.
It's totally a different part of the brain, isn't it, than what Waterboy's talking about?
I think so.
Anyway. Well, thanks for that, because I can use that in my classes to help dads connect in with what you're talking about.
Maybe you got a bigger umedongwalaga.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. I've just got Waterboy in my head now, and I forgot what I was going to ask. Fuck.
Yeah, but the amygdala does change.
Yeah, so it changes. I'm only assuming that it would probably change back, right? Along with some other stuff in the brain that may...
Yeah, well, I mean, again, like after birth, as mammals, we are should not have our baby more than an arm length, but away from us, because we're mammals, like in case of predators. So that brain changes in the way of being so sensitive to the baby, moves, noises, all of that kind of stuff. So that does kind of change, but also like the breastfeeding as well, depending on how long that happens for. She's all about that baby and feeding that baby, and
that's a whole nother world.
That is a whole nother
that breastfeeding space.
Oh. I was like, these are not yours anymore. Do not touch. These are for the baby only. But there's a lot of, that look, it took 9 months for her body to grow and change and birth this baby. It's going to take that long potentially.
To get back to normal.
To get back potentially to, you'll never be back to normal as such. You're now a mother, but understanding that as a man is important. And I think it'd be important for you to even talk about preparing for that postpartum.
Yeah,
definitely.
I know Alex is definitely nervous about that, and I'm losing myself. I'm never going to be me again. And I'm like, I kind of framed it as
losing.
you're blossoming into your fullest potential or fullest expression of the female, like the mother.
I never felt more empowered after my birth. I was like, I fucking birthed a baby.
Yeah,
Like
a created life.
Yeah. So, look, yeah, I guess, again, can you see how like there's that focus on everything we're not going to have and not get, it's like, this is an amazing blessing and experience and that you're about to embark on. And as a woman, being able to experience that and really come out of it and be, regardless, it's like you're a warrior. Like we just did this. So it's, look, it's hard, but.
Yeah, post-birth I think is going to be
The hardest.
No, I think for you guys, I think post-birth is going to be good for you. Like once it's out, I think Alex is just going to go,
But call on those people around you. You don't have to do it alone.
I got mum on speed dial. It's getting cold.
Yeah, and don't be scared to say, look, here's the laundry. If you're coming over, bring food. Like her job and, both of yours is just to like come in and really connect in and nurture her in those first few weeks. And her role is just to feed that baby. And
we'll bring pizza over for you. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Our first night, we were up at, I think Tish was up at 11 and we went to the hospital at 1. Or maybe it was 3, I don't know. Anyway, but we were up quite early and we decided to do the turnstile birth, like in that morning, out that afternoon.
Yeah,
so
I did that.
We got
3
home
hours
at
later.
6. Tisha's family, and I'm like, so I'm telling everybody, like, come back to our place, let's have a drink.
Gosh, please don't do that.
Tasha's absolutely buggered. Anyway, so my parents came back, they had one drink and they left. Tisha's family like, we'll order some Chinese. Like they were there till like 9 o'clock.
Oh, well.
And you just didn't want that.
My mother-in-law was in the first flight up from Melbourne and stayed with me for 10 days. And she does not cook. She does not clean. She wouldn't even change a nappy.
Are we cutting this out of the podcast?
You can if you want, but no, I don't care. Honestly.
Strengths in other areas.
Yeah, it was... I didn't realise it.
It's a burden. It's more work.
Oh my gosh, it was really bad.
I think I think when you introduce a child, that's when the in-laws really become the outlaws. Like pre-child, you're like, I love their family, like, and then post-child, you're like, oh my god, your family, can they just fuck off?
Yeah,
don't get me wrong, I love my.
Do we need to cut this out of the podcast, Ash?
No, but it's a lot when you've got all of these like visitors coming in and they just want to hold the baby. It's not about you as the mother, or it's about the baby. And it's like I didn't even have food in my house because I went into labour at 39 weeks and wasn't expecting it. So it was like, it really makes you realise our Western culture is just so like messed up in a way that other cultures, it's like the family comes in to nurture the mother so the mother can nurture that baby. And in our Western culture, it's like, let's buy the baby clothes and I didn't even have food. It's like,
my partner's family definitely did do that. Like
that's amazing.
Tisha's mum stayed with us for a week after, which was awesome. And like heaps of meals got cooked, cleaning.
Yeah, my mum did that for me, my mother-in-law.
What were you doing?
Man, I was just trying to steal a nurse from my kid. I'm like, can I hold her? Can I have a go?
Just for an hour or just for 10 minutes?
Just want to see what she looks like. I've seen pictures.
No, I think it's awesome that you guys were so open to learning and Ash, for you, that it made such a positive impact on your experience with your partner. And
look forward to the journey. Is there any final takeaways? Anything you want to share? Anything that new dads or expecting dads?
I'll just say any person out there that is pregnant or is looking at getting pregnant or a new expecting dad that has a say, definitely do some hypnobirthing. I can't speak more highly of it. I mean, I'm not an expert. I didn't do any other classes, but I think like I've got a perfectly healthy little baby girl. I think the hypnobirthing does take away a lot of the anxiety. And as we've spoken about with Dr. Ashley Morland, thank you, the hormones and stuff do have effects on babies' brains and development. And I think, in all honesty, the hypnobirthing is like calming and positive.
And empowering, it sounds too.
Very empowering. So, yeah. And like, you know me, James, I'm not that woo. I'm a little bit woo from time to time, but I'm freaking tradie. So guys, just man up, or, you know, step up to it. Just do it. I found it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, extremely valuable, and it's definitely relieved my anxiety, and I do feel empowered for the birth, and I feel like I can actually do something, and be a part of it.
And look, you know, I want you to look at me as your birth coach. So I want to be that person, that in between. I'm not that medical professional, but I'm not that family member that may have their own birth story and opinions, or just do as the doctor says. And look, I would never tell you to go against medical advice, but if something comes up, that I can be that person to go, well, let's look at this from some different perspectives, and let's really talk through this. And I give my parents support right up until I even have dads messaging me when their partners are in labour going, look, labour's stalled, like what can you recommend? And I'll give some tips, you know. So
nice.
It doesn't just end once you finish my class on the weekend. Like it's, if you need something, then just text me.
She's not getting back to me. Hold on.
Keep breathing.
Yeah. So I hope that this will look. This course for me and my husband was life changing, and I hope that it will have the same impact on you as well, James. And it's great to hear that kind of, you know, it had that impact on you, Ash, that you look so positively on it.
And where can people find you?
So my business is Belly to Birth, and you can find me on Instagram. I share a lot on Instagram. It's belly, the number 2, birth, and bellytobirth.com.au. And I offer classes on the Gold Coast, and then live online Zoom classes, which are, still really popular. So, yeah.
And you've got your own podcast as well?
I do, yeah. It's called the Nurture Hub Pregnancy and Birth Podcast. So my host, Nicola Lay, is an amazing breath coach, and so we bring a lot of professionals in and just talk everything pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and it's a really great free resource that I just hope for anyone that can't maybe do a hypnobirthing course, that there's so much free information out there. It's just gaining the inspiration to want to find it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And I look forward to Sunday. That'd be great. Yeah. Thanks, Shari.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
See you, everyone.